picking up on some of the themes, but we're now 1331. Sorry, we're 1431 CET. I'm reading my computer here. Obviously, I'm 1331 at the moment, and other people are on many different zones at different times, basically. But I think we're probably going to make a start, and I'm going to share, if I can share. Gunter, I should be able to share, hopefully. Yes. Just with me for a second. I just want to share just a quick overview of what the panel is about. So just bear with me for a second.
Oh.
Okay, are we all okay? Yes, we can see that?
Yes, we can.
Good. Anyway, welcome to the final bit of the seminar. Theme 4 was opportunities, because when we were structuring this, we were thinking about the challenges, of course, first, and then the sort of case studies in terms of experiences, both in terms of delivering the curriculum. And this morning we were talking about how we integrated the real world in the context of the COVID-19 landscape. The final session really is to sort of try to pull together a lot of the experiences which colleagues have discussed over the last 2 days and the challenges, and to try and translate our challenges as opportunities going forward in terms of this new reality which we will face. And I think this morning's session in particular, I think we were coming to a conclusion that things will not go back to exactly the same as they were before. The students' expectations have changed, particularly in terms of recorded lectures. But I think the session this afternoon is very much open to everybody, really, to think about what are the opportunities going forward. I've put a list here, but by no means is this a definitive list. Yeah, I think it's a bit more than just identifying the positives out of the process. I think this is a point Francois was just touching on in our pre-panel discussion, the contributions to pedagogic knowledge, how the pedagogic approaches are going to change, what we can do in this new world that we didn't do previously, but also what are the deficiencies, particularly in terms of teaching and learning and learning outcomes for our students. What, you know, there are things which are going to be missed. Then, of course, what are the changes to the delivery mode, student engagement and assessment, which will become permanent? And as I said this morning in one of my contributions, I don't think I ever want to see a real world student presentation again. The online version is easier to grade. You can go back to it. And again, it's more useful for our external examiners because they can see what the students did. But I mean, that's just a small example of this. But I think there are much wider examples of the changes which will become permanent. This is from a wider perspective, and this is why I'm very glad we've got Karen, we've got Francois looking at the role of organizations like IRES and indeed ERES as well, in terms of new opportunities for collaboration and networking. And indeed, this seminar is a very good example of these new opportunities for collaboration and networking. And we've had a really global conversation about real estate education over the past 2 days, which is a huge positive. And again, of course, from that, how do we facilitate sharing best practice with colleagues on a global basis? We were talking in the session this morning about the ability for all of us to contribute something to a sort of repository of case studies or whatever it might be that we can share with our colleagues on a global basis. And then, of course, the technology issues. And I think one thing that's come across very clearly is, and I think this is true even in supposedly developed economies like the UK, there's been a big problem with technology or bandwidths and internet access and all those issues. And students have suffered because of this. A number of students who've come to me, UK students, with problems in terms of logging on and their connections, and the fact that a lot of these were working from home, and the home connection, there might be 5 people currently working on it. So all those sort of issues. But again, I thought it was interesting that particularly our colleagues in certain parts of the world were highlighting this as a big issue in terms of access to the internet, and also the right amount of technology and its effective use, not sort of using technology purely for technology's sake, that we all suddenly do virtual field trips. We never bring a student into a real world building again. I'm not sure that's going to work basically going forward. And even our current students are saying to us, will we be allowed to go out and do something in the summer term? And I said, I don't know. It depends on government policy at that point in time, because again, they feel that they're missing that particular part of the experience. And again, I think this is something we also touched on this morning, the extent to which online will become a threat to conventional delivery, and how we might proceed with that. I mean, what's the sort of model going forward? And the last question I put in, because certainly this is not true so far, a better work-life balance for real estate educators. And I think that hasn't happened so far. We've all had the 80-hour weeks and the screencasting that goes wrong and you have to redo it, and other assorted things. And the sheer volume of emails from students. The students are in a different learning mode, and they're much more likely to send you an email, even though the answer to it might be it was on slide 2 of interactive session number 3, but they obviously haven't looked at slide 2 of interaction session number 3. And that's unfortunately been a lot of my email traffic. And again, it's not so much the postgrads, but certainly our undergrads. Our undergrads have struggled, I think, more than our postgrads in terms of making the transition to this type of learning, in terms of engaging fully with it. And I think they're more willing to send you the email looking for you to tell them exactly where something is, rather than just looking at the material and trying to find the answer for themselves. So those are some of the things hopefully we can touch on this afternoon. We have some really good panelists, as well as our wider audience. We got Karen Gibler, who's Executive Director of IRES. And again, we're hoping that Karen can give us some ideas with respect to these new networking opportunities and a new role, I think, for IRES, particularly in terms of its education agenda, where we've got Annette Kämpf-Dern, and Annette has been, I think, one of the more innovative educators in Europe over the past number of years, particularly embracing a lot of change. And I'm looking forward to hearing her perspectives on the opportunities going forward. We've got Kariuki from the University of Nairobi to give us a IRES perspective on all of this, and in terms some of the opportunities for education in Africa going forward. We got my colleague Qulin Ke from University College London, and I know Quinlan's been doing a lot of online teaching to students like myself who are not in the UK at the moment. And again, it's to look at the opportunities and to share our experience. We've got Dustin Reed from Virginia Tech. Dustin's had a long day so far. 3:30 this morning. We did try to put you in the last paper. We weren't expecting to see you at the beginning of the session this morning, but again, thanks Dustin to give us his perspective on all of this. And again, his case study this morning was an interesting illustration of international collaboration as a result of COVID-19. And again, those sort of international collaborations might become a much more common feature of the education landscape in the next 10 years. And last but not least, we got our colleague, Stephen Roulac. I'm not sure Stephen has joined us yet, but undoubtedly Stephen will have some interesting takes on the way forward in terms of always having an interesting perspective on the future of real estate markets and indeed the future of education. So that's our panel, and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go to Karen first to give us her perspectives.
Well, thank you very much, Éamonn, Paloma, Gunther, everyone who has worked so hard to put this together. I was popping in yesterday and eavesdropping, and again this morning from the US. I was not as dedicated as Dustin to be up at 3:30 and joining this meeting. But when Éamonn first asked me, would you appear on this panel? I said, but Éamonn, you know I'm not teaching. But he said, can you give me a broader perspective? And I was glad to have this opportunity, because I think in this last year, it's been easier than ever to tell people, what does IRES, the International Real Estate Society, do? Because people said, how's it relevant? What do you do? You know, I've got the European Society, I've got the African Society, I've got the Asian Society, but what do you do? And when everyone started shutting down their individual conferences, they came to us, and there seemed to be a need to start filling the void and helping everyone in this new environment. where everyone's trying so hard to work with new technology, learning how to teach totally online, how to run your office with never going into the office. And we said, well, we've already been doing this for a long time in terms of connecting everyone around the world from the different societies. So how could we step in and help on a global level and lift some of the burden and meanwhile coordinate with everyone? And so what we found out is that going forward, we think there is a tremendous role that we can play on a global level to help all the societies share on a global platform. Last year, I hope some of you participated in our global doctoral symposium. Pacific Rim was the only conference that we had last year, and they did go ahead with their doctoral program. But none of the other societies were able to hold those valuable sessions that bring new people in to our societies and give the doctoral students a chance to show their research and get feedback from professors outside their universities. So Paloma worked on that along with Jeremy Gabe and along with Kwan Ok Lee from Singapore. So we put together a global committee. And Masaki Mori was on there. It was a lot of work because no one had done that within our organization. They figured out how to have students submit from all around the world. We had 39 applications to appear in the doctoral seminar. We got 31 pre-recorded videos, which then had to be translated to be put on YouTube. And we still have those. We can give you access to see those. And from those, the committee chose 9 students to do a live presentation with discussions and question and answer. So we're saying, this is a way we could start bringing together the global doctoral student group. It doesn't have to be that American Real Estate Society has to put forth money from the foundation to bring them all to the US. We can still let them meet other doctoral students virtually. So we're looking at how to go ahead with that in the next year, with the different organizations having their conferences in some sort of virtual format or hybrid format in the next year. We're hoping that people don't go back to just having their own separate gatherings like that, that we can help broaden the participation, whether it's in conjunction with each meeting or whether it's on one event. Another event several people on here attended was we had a global women's event because that we didn't have any meetings like the American Real Estate Society usually has a women's breakfast. The Asian Society has a women's panel. We did it on a global basis. We had more than 125 people sign up and more than 75 were online at a time to hear a panel discussion, question and answer, and networking. So we formed a committee to have another one for next year. And we have this opportunity. For the first time, we got all the society executive directors and presidents to come together and hold a meeting. And there's these issues that have been around on the IRES board for years, such as how do you pay dues? How do you what does it cost for each conference? What is it? How do you treat someone from the European coming to the American conference? I think in the past, the groups have been more competitive. And what we're seeing is with everyone faced with these same hardships as last year, people are becoming more cooperative. So rather than trying to protect and say, well, this is my source of revenue by getting people to join my regional society, and I don't want them to join yours or your conference, everyone was willing to share and say, this is what we're doing next year. How can we help you? How can you help us? Probably one of the examples is this education seminar. Back before European Society had an education seminar, IRES considered holding a global education seminar because we didn't feel like that any of the societies were doing enough inside their own conferences for education. Well, Europeans stepped up and started doing their own conference. But now this year, it's opened up globally because people don't have to physically travel to be there. So we're hoping to, continue to cooperate to see how we can do this going forward. we're going to gather the conference organizers together on a conference call to discuss all the issues everyone has trying to plan these 2021 conferences, because there's a lot going on there. But a good note is that Pacific Rim has 43 people submitted abstracts for their conference, which is good for them. So 43 is a good number for them. So they're going to have a one-day, half industry seminar, half presentations. And we're helping find some of the speakers, because as Éamonn mentioned earlier, I think in yesterday's talk, you can get speakers from outside the region for your conferences. But if we're doing it virtually or a hybrid method, we're bringing in some speakers to help out in Australia that they normally wouldn't be able to get for their conference. And we can do that with our industry participants on the board. So going to the future, I think there's a lot of opportunity for, as you mentioned, putting together these case repositories. We've talked about that for a long time, that we ought to have a central area that people can share educational materials. We've been struggling getting all the regions to put together even lists of educational programs. We should be able to go one place and find out all the real estate educational programs around the globe. Share educational materials like case studies, perhaps have the master classes. We've talked with Francois about this several times. We should be able to pick experts from our memberships around the world and provide master classes to other regions and help doctoral students especially, but also master students and perhaps even bachelor degree students. And the other thing I think we can talk about going forward, even though this is the education conference, is we're getting a lot of interest of people saying, how can we form international collaborative research groups? You know, we're also protective about if we have a source of data or if we have a particular topic that we're the expert studying. You know, there's a lot of competition there, but we're getting with this sort of feeling of we're all in this together. I'm getting a lot of interest from within the women's group especially, that there ought to be a way to identify on a global level the women within the meeting that are interested in the same topic and put them off into a networking room and let them share ideas about data sources, contacts, research topics, that sort of thing, and perhaps find either colleagues that they can do research with or just people to bounce ideas off of from outside their region that share their particular research interests. And that may work with education too, you know, finding people in different regions of the world that share an interest specifically in valuation or specifically an interest in workspace, like Annette, and help them form virtual groups to share information that they don't have to travel around the world and attend the individual regions to share information. At least that's my hope.
Okay, thank you, Karen. That's really good. That gets us thinking a lot about international collaborations and the future of such collaborations. And I'm going to move on to Annette to give her perspective on opportunities going forward.
Yes, thank you very much. And Éamonn, also for the kind words of me having tried for experimenting in some new forms of teaching and learning in real estate and beyond. And in fact, I did do that, but in my environment, I was always some kind of exotic before COVID, I have to say. So what I was trying was not so much appreciated by a lot of colleagues, and that will be a point I will expand on. And I will use an experiment that we did this year, where it all comes together. And in fact, I think we could not have done that without the experience we had before. But before I get to that, I want to thank Karen also, because a lot of what I noted as future orientation, you already included. I'm so happy that IRES is going into that direction, because I think this is something we really need to do, to collaborate even more, not only exchange once a year at the education seminar, but also over time in between with various resources. I will get to that. But what I wanted to tell you about, because I think it could be exemplary for not only conferences and exchange, but also for the teaching experiment, is the hybrid format. We did this year, we had the Transdisciplinary Workplace Research Network. It's really very difficult to say, the TWR 2020 conference. And it was the second conference. It's a conference about workplace research that is transdisciplinary. So between academics and practitioners, we try to get valid research into a conference, and also from practitioners, not only from academia. And of course, and the conference is every second year, and it was the second conference after the start 2 years ago. And so it has a very long time to plan because we have a very rigid review process. So we started like more than a year before to organize that, long before COVID, to have the call for papers and so on. And in the beginning, and some people asked us whether they could maybe have the presentation from Australia virtually, and we said we are going to try to have one track that you can at least present virtually. So that was last year in October or something like that. Nobody expected COVID to happen. So when it started to come, we were just in the process of starting the review process and the registration half a year before, and then COVID came, and the question was, can we do this conference that is so reliable on the personal contact, on the exchange, on the networking, because it was bringing those researchers together, as Karen said, to think about collaborations across the disciplines, across the countries. And we said and at that moment when we started to talk about that, and our idea, my friend and partner in that, a professor of sociology in Germany, Masha, we said maybe we can try something that is hybrid, but it was in March. You all know where we were in March with technology. So we said but if we want to set that up, we need the people to have registered because of the cost. And we had the feeling that a virtual or hybrid conference would not be less expensive than a physical conference, although we would spare the food. And so we had discussions already on the board about the costs. I only want to say that because it's very important to know setting up a technological setting that really allows connection and so on is expensive. And if you want to have it both, if you want to have physical people interacting with virtual people, and if you want to have the discussions of the participants in the physical room together with the virtual people, they sit before their microphone, but in the physical room, you cannot hear the people if there is not a microphone before their mouth, and stuff like that. So it was clear it would not be easy. But in the end, I don't want to make the long story short, we did have a hybrid conference, and I would still say it's the only one I know that was truly hybrid. So, and it was in September, so we already feared again that we would go back into lockdowns. The numbers were increasing already. We had to set it up all with distances and with all the hygiene measures. In the end, we had 30 people being in Frankfurt and 70 people being online from all over the world. And it did work out, and we made it happen that people could interact, because we also provided not only we had workshops that were interactive between virtual and physical people in one room. We had keynotes where some of the keynote speakers were virtual, but some were in Frankfurt. But the best thing was one paper presentation where one guy presented from one woman presented from Sweden, and the other one of the presenters was in Frankfurt and had the discussion. So it was truly hybrid, and we had joint cooking, virtual cooking. We distributed recipes in advance and then had people in their kitchens all over the world. We wanted to have, in fact, this did not happen, but we would have prepared that they cooked together in an informal way. We had an architectural tour in Frankfurt and a field excursion that we broadcasted. So we had virtual participants in our excursion. And we had a running dinner where we put people together 4 people in Frankfurt and 2 to 3 people joining them virtually and then changing the groups after each course. So what I want to wrap up, so very small, is it is possible to have this exchange and take all the positives that I want also to say something about it, take all the positives, but it's a lot of effort. We will get more experience, but we are quite sure, and in fact, a couple of weeks ago, we just decided that the next TRR conference, which will be 2022 in Milan, will again be a hybrid conference. So we think that these hybrid formats we will get used to because they have so many advantages. We can include, we can merge the positives of physical and virtual and the opportunities we would not have otherwise, which is especially to include people who cannot travel, where it's too expensive, where the time or other things. The only thing is the time difference, as we also experience, that is somehow of a challenge. But we said, like, we do it as we do it now. Where the conference takes place, and this is the ERES conference, we take the ERES time zone, and those people from the States or from Australia have to stay up late or get up early if they want to join, but it's better than not having them join. And I think that's a real advantage of this kind of hybrid model. And by the way, I missed to mention something that could also be an improvement to this wonderful ERES event that we have here, which is a perfect example on the advantages. I think we never had as many people, we never had as many international people and so on. We had a collaboration tool, which is Discord, which allowed us on the side to chat and to meet. It's like WhatsApp for groups, for integrated groups. And this is something I would also like to put into the discussion if we do the next thing, have this kind of Discord tool where people can meet and chat on the side or in a room and so on. So we linked this to our conference as well. So maybe to one of the questions that Éamonn put up, like the forecast, what are the positives to wrap this up? I think for us, the instructors, and I see, and I'm coming back to my beginning, I'm not the exotic guy or girl anymore. My colleagues who thought I was exotic, they had to be more agile, be flexible, and learn something. They would never have done that jump if we had not had COVID. So I think in the way on blended learning, on new didactics, we are making so much more progress through that, which is really, really positive. We would never have done that for years, I think, if we would not have had COVID. Also, the university infrastructure. I mean, I did have web conferences and guest speakers online even before COVID, but the software we used was so uncomfortable. I needed like half an hour in advance to set it up with the people and experiment before and so on. It was really difficult. And so we did not have the software, we did not have the seminar rooms, we did not have the e-learning support, like the support departments that I think have done a good job in the meantime to speed up us all up. And I would not go to the things that Karen already mentioned, but the ideas for the future that I would like to take is that we also have more informal meetings, also like we did at the lunch time today. So this is something we could set up more without a big program, and as also the females call, I think also suggested that we might have an education seminar or an education lunch once in a quarter or something, where we just meet for 2 hours, the people who are interested about middle of the day, and chat about topics that came up, or maybe somebody makes a suggestion, but so that we can meet, which is so much easier in the future. We could also share, to add on what Karen said, on field trips, or what we heard today on this VR topics on cities. Then if we are doing a field trip with our students, if we are looking at a green building or a project development, why not taking and we did it with a mobile phone and Zoom, and we broadcasted, and the people dialed in, and they were present with our field trip that we did. And I think that's something that we could also do, and we could videotape the field trip and put it into, and that would be something I would ask to Karen whether we could do that, to really have this have a platform where we can store materials, where we can find and exchange materials on these kind of videos, of course, course materials, on didactical things. Yesterday we heard a lot of things that could be shared, but I think the big thing is, what is missing is a kind of library, a kind of melting pot where there is a structure in there and we can reuse that. And I do know that this costs money, but maybe it could be by either crowdfunding, or that institutions who do use that resource pay a small amount, not too much, but something that pays IRES for the cost of organizing and structuring and providing that, because I think it would be a very invaluable exchange that we could have by that. But it will require resources in technology and personnel, I'm quite sure, but I think it would be great addition on something like that. And I don't know, last thing about the campuses, do we need campuses in the future? I'm sure yes, and I would like, but it would be hybrid. It's a choice of students. And I think this is very important, what Deborah said previously. And I also did that in my classroom. I asked my students, do you want to have a classic lecture, maybe recorded or whatever? Do you want a flipped classroom? Or do you want something like an interactive lecture? And I guided them. I told them what I mean with these words, because they didn't know what flipped classroom is. And then they voted more or less. Now we are having, because they have so many flipped classrooms, which is more uncomfortable for them. But they have so many things where people record and they have to study alone, and then they talk about questions. In the end, we are now doing an interactive lecture, which is not like the best of all. It's just I'm giving them what they wanted, so they cannot complain when I tell them you have to read, because this is interactive, and to have time to have interaction and not having the classic lecture. You have to prepare, because otherwise, and you chose it. It's not me who thinks it's the best. I think it's the best. But it's you who chose that. So I think they cannot complain, and giving them choice whether they want to study at home or whether they want to come to campus. I think that needs to guide us in the future. And that's, I think, that we will need the campuses, because there are enough students who want to meet and who want to come, but we should also provide students who cannot afford or cannot do that, or other reasons, give the choice for that. And so my credo is altogether, I think the hybrid, that will be what we need to strive for, and it will be complex and we will need to have exchange, but we can do it now.
Okay, thanks, Annette. Some really good ideas there, and I fully agree with you that we've made a massive step change in a relatively short period of time, because I think adopting all this new technology incrementally would have taken us 10 years, basically. So, but it's not just education, obviously. I think the world of work in general has made that step change, which is very important. And again, I like some of the ideas in the business school during the summer to prepare for the blended learning in the autumn term. We ran a community of practice every second Friday at lunchtime. And that was really great, because people shared ideas about what was working and what wasn't working. So it helped a lot of us. And I think, that's something, again, I think for the IRES agenda, to have possibly this idea of a community of practice on the education side, which people could drop into every so often. But again, some really good ideas. I'm now going to move to our colleague Catherine to give us a perspective from Nairobi, and also a wider IRES perspective on the opportunities going forward. So Catherine, the floor is yours. The virtual floor, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. I represent IRES. This is the African Real Estate Society, as a president, and I'm also at the University of Nairobi, so I'll share a little of each. I think for IRES, during this year, we've had several meetings as a committee, the executive committee, which we never were able to do before. We've also had our AGM, virtual AGM. And during the AGM, we actually had 2 presentations, generally covering the African real estate market. And then each of the chapters have had their own webinars, which they invited us to. And I think that interaction was very good. For the University of Nairobi, I think like everybody else, we moved, in March when the shutdown came, we all moved into virtual. A lot of us had been trained a little before on teaching online, but now it was a crash program. So we were taught how to teach, and finally, initially did not want to do exams online, but when the COVID cases spiked, then we had no choice but to actually have exams online. So out of this, I think some of the positives is out of just having the virtual platform is, of course, being able to interact with you on this education seminar. And for us, even as Africans, to be part of it, to have IRES also being very active in terms of organizing global events that you are able to join. And I think out of this, I think both for the younger and older people working from home was exciting at the beginning. It might not be very exciting now. Going forward, I think we all are probably looking at a blended kind of arrangement where we can go face-to-face for a period and do the online at home. I think what has been important and maybe positive is especially for our evening classes with the masters and our diploma classes who have always struggled to come for the class in the evening or at weekends, and now are able to enjoy, class at home or class in the office. Of course, there are challenges sometimes when you're at home, especially in Nairobi with a curfew, because you have a curfew starting at 10, and this is, it's been a while. Some of the students are working, so they need to get home. So the class essentially must end early. And if it starts a bit early, then your people in the traffic trying to get home. So all those things that you need to try and figure out, how do you do, or how do you get a class all together at any one time. I think flexibility in terms of time has been okay for a lot of students, but flexibility also means sometimes your classes are not well attended, or you'll not have the same group this week as of next week. While if it's a face-to-face, everybody has no choice but to turn up for the class. I think easy accessibility to a class, whether you're on the road or at home, I think has been good for all of us. You can work, if I traveled and went to the village, I can still teach my class from there. And I think that has also been good. In terms of maybe online assessment, I think from my experience teaching the bachelor's in real estate as well as the master's, it's been easier to probably give the students group work that they can go and work on and present, so that it's not just you talking. So I think a lot of more interaction or more involvement with the students, so that during the class they don't get bored listening to one person. And I think from the group work that was discussed in the morning, I think we're all learning that probably that's the way to go. And then we probably have now an opportunity to use what has always been actually there, because e-learning for the university has been there, but so long as you were teaching face-to-face, you put it aside. You imagined it was too complicated, or the gadgets were not available, so you didn't want to go that way. But one cannot say that the university had not put it in place already. Then in terms of contributions to knowledge, I think from our own department, this is the Department of Real Estate in the School of the Built Environment, we already had a diploma course that was designed on what we call the ODEL. This is the open distance and electronic learning. So already we have, excuse me, excuse me. So we already had the material already designed under ODEL, and we were almost going to roll it out maybe this year. Probably come next year. This is material. This is actually material that we're already using now to teach our classes. That is designed for distance learning. Then in terms of changes maybe to how we deliver and students' engagement, like I said, I think blended is going to be the thing to go with, face-to-face and online. Currently, we have our first years on campus. I think more to enjoy the experience of being at the university, since they didn't have that opportunity. And then any courses that are studio-based, or any courses that have laboratory, all those are actually having face-to-face, engagement. Student engagement has also, I think, been innovative. I agree, of course, group work is important. We used to give group work before, and I think from what I have learned today, you can actually, even when you have face-to-face, have groups meet during the class period instead of sending them home to do the group work at their own time. So it's something that that is useful as we've learned today. In terms of, I think one of the easier ways that you've seen, especially on assessment, is external examination. We engaged an external examiner who is from Tanzania, and he was able to actually moderate our question papers. He was able to examine the exam itself very easily without having to travel to Nairobi. And if you know, Tanzania has very low cases, so they didn't want to interact with Kenya as well. So that has been much easier. I like the idea of inviting guest speakers, and I think from this interaction with ERES, it's something to think about, that you can have people from all over the world to interact with us. And I liked the Jim, I think, told us about Tableau, and I think that is something that we would want to also use. I looked it up yesterday. In terms of collaboration and networking, yes, I think this seminar has taught us we can collaborate not just with within Africa, like we've done before. I know we have an MOA with the University of Cape Town, but now I think going forward, we can interact with any other university all over the world. And I think even the virtual tours, I think, were very exciting. And I teach estate agency and marketing, and already we're looking at how do you advertise using the virtual tour. So it's something that has been there, but probably we didn't know how to share, or we didn't even have the technology, the more advanced technology to do it. And I can see that we've learned that from this seminar. In terms of whether we have the right technology, I think our universities, and I think most universities, are exploring different technology. University of Nairobi has been using Zoom, Google Classroom. We've been using Teams as well. So I think as we go forward, I think we'll have one way of doing it that is good for everyone, and be able to get our students more engaged, because sometimes, you know, especially when they don't switch their cameras, you don't know what they're doing behind there, whether they are actually present or not. And that was something, especially during exams, you can't tell. And it was a challenge for us because some of the students have a smartphone. When you tell them to switch on their camera, they say, if I switch on my camera, then I can't see the questions, you know, or, you know, challenges in connectivity, issues of electricity outage, and all those. I think as we go forward, I'm sure we'll get the right technology that will also be useful for us as academics, and as well as for the students. In terms of, is it a threat to conventional delivery? I don't think so. I think online has been useful this last year. If we didn't have it, I don't know what we'd be doing. We'd probably all be sitting at home waiting for COVID to end. So we are lucky that we have it, and I think we should use it the best way possible, you know, all over the world. Is there a better life balance for real estate educators? Yes, it is, but I think it also eats into our family time. And I think one person mentioned about the students calling you and sending you emails whenever, in the middle of the night, in the morning, on weekends, calling you on telephone. So you're obviously more accessible now. It's almost like social media. You know, they can send you messages on WhatsApp or wherever. This is even more intrusive in the sense that they almost expect you to be present all the time. Already, I think families are suffering from, you know, fighting for space, and especially if your house is not big enough, or you're fighting with weather outside, you can't work outside, so you have to work indoors. So suddenly, I think we are better off now, and going forward, I think the opportunities are there, and I think we need to take them on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we got, yeah. Thank you, Catherine, for that really good contribution in terms of your perspectives. And again, it's good to get an IRES perspective on some of these issues, because the contexts are quite different. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Qulin from University College London, and she's going to share some of her experiences, and again, to look at the opportunities going forward.
Hello, everyone. Great to see you virtually. A little bit weird. I do feel a little bit weird. Well, I'm going to stick to the topic, Éamonn Sanders. This topic make me think very hard and reflect what I have been doing. So I think it's time for me to draw up a brief conclusion. In the past 3 months, we all have been working under great pressure, coping with this new teaching method, online teaching. I think the first positive is my personal positive from the online teaching. I never spent so much time and effort thinking hard and reflecting the teaching and learning, student engagement in my old teaching life. So in the past 3 months, I almost spent every working minute thinking about this question: how to deliver the teaching, and how to improve the students' learning experience, writing the script, recording the lecture, writing the quiz exercise, testing the technology, and try to get some feedback from the student about the online teaching, etc. So this is this is the personal positive. By the end of this term, I have to say that although I am still in the learning curve, but I have survived, and my teaching skill has been improved. Through the lecture recording, my English has been improved greatly. This is impossible in the normal situation. So now this is the positive things for me from my point of view. Another positive thing is I think technology make lots of impossible become possible now. Now everything our colleagues say here is the evidence of that. Now through the technology, we bring the student in a different country, different location together online to deliver the teaching, which would be impossible otherwise. So now this is really the positive things that cannot be denied. And another positive things I think is from the student's point of view, learning will become more flexible, which means that a student can learn at any time, at any location. Now, looking for the future, which might affect the amount of the teaching space university need and the type of the teaching space university need, which is going to, I think it's a very good research topic. If any of you interested in this topic, I'm happy to explore this topic with you in the future. Definitely flexible learning will be the norm in the future. It will affect the space university provide as the flexible working practice affect the office space. So this could be, potential research topic in the future. So now this is the positive thing. Lots of the positive things our colleague has already talked, so I won't repeat it here. I just pick up a few things that the other colleague have mentioned about. For example, the amount of the right amount of the technology and its effective use. It is amazing from yesterday's presentation, I realized lots of our colleagues here, they knew lots more than me about the technology. I am not technology wide, but I do realize that certain amounts of the technology is necessary to effectively deliver the teaching. For example, the teaching platform, if we only know one teaching platform, that is not enough from my personal experience. We have to know at least 2 or 3 type of the teaching platform, because not external speaker can be connected through Zoom for the confidentiality, for the confidential or whatever reason. Then we have to try the other teaching platform, such as we use the Blackboard Collaborate, built in Moodle. This is the only way we can connect some people from the industry. So although the functions of the different platform, they are similar, but my experience is every platform has a strength and a weakness. The more you use it, the more you realize, then you can choose the right platform to the right type of the group and for the right type of the teaching. So this is the platform choose. Another example is about the recording, lecture recording. We all know it's a very, very time consuming. One slide could take me 2 or 3 hours to do the recording initially, with me huge amounts of time. Then someone gave me some tape and encouraged me to use the different software. Then I realized that there are different software to record the lecture. Each of them has the weakness and the strengths. That's true. But we need to choose the one that suits us, especially when we all have to record with a certain amount of period of time. Choose the type of the software to do the recording. If you have the more time, probably you choose the one which is more time consuming but can present a better recording result. That's fine. But if you have a short period of time, then you have to choose the one, although it has the weakness, but you have to, because we have to survive, then we have to use it. So about the lecture recording software, we need to master 2 or 3 the different recording software or technique, so that to choose the one that suits you in the special situation. And the other, the functions, for example, that how to write, how to use the quiz or polling, these kinds of things. Then also we realize the breakup room, we cannot do the polling on the Zoom, which makes us feel very disappointed. But if we didn't try all these things, then we didn't know. And the different software like a Blackboard Collaborate, then they have this function too. There are lots of more functions I am not familiar, or I still don't know, that I need to explore. That could be time consuming. So too much technology could be waste of the resource, but a certain amount or right amount of the technology is very, very necessary to deliver the teaching effectively. That's my experience from the last 3 months of the online teaching. So this is the technology. The online as a threat to conventional delivery. I think people have a different idea. I do realize it is a real threat to the traditional delivery. The role of the teacher might be changing in the future because we all pre-record our lecture. So the teacher's role will change from talking in front of the student relentlessly to more facilitating students' learning through engagement, through the engaging. We might more function as a teaching assistant, assisting students to understand the teaching material and facilitating them to understand what they have learned and applying what they have learned to the real world. Or to the, so this is the role that the teacher will take in the future on the conventional delivery. Another thing is, I think the number of the lectures university need might be reduced because some master from the US can deliver my lecture, even Annette can deliver my lecture online. So maybe the number of the teachers the university needed will be reduced, or we may all become the teaching assistant, assisting the students in their learning process. So I do see this is a real threat to the conventional teaching delivery. The better working life balance for real estate educator. I mean, so far there's no balance. As I said, in the last 3 months, I spent all my working time thinking, writing script, recording, writing quiz, testing technology, all these sort of things. But by the end of the day, I have to say all this effort is worthwhile. I hope in the future, then we can get more balance between the life and the working. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much for sharing some perspectives. Again, I can concur with you. I certainly, and again, other colleagues have said the same in our institution, that we all ended up restructuring our lecture notes. Maybe our lecture notes needed restructuring, but certainly I think they've improved as a result. But it was an extra amount of time we had to spend that we had to factor in, as well, of course, of dealing with the technologies and, of course, learning the technology to be able to record. But again, thanks for the perspective, very useful. I'm now going to move to our next panelist, Dustin, who's been with us since probably 3:30 in the morning, Virginia time, to share his perspectives on the opportunities going forward. And again, for those of you who missed his case study this morning, it was a very interesting example of international collaboration in this new normal.
Thanks, Éamonn, appreciate it. Stephen Roulac is always a far more intriguing presenter than I am, so I'm going to keep my comments purposefully short so we have a chance to get to him. But I really appreciate the opportunity to sit on a panel to discuss opportunities because COVID has actually presented an interesting opportunity to me personally. Last spring, right as the pandemic was hitting, we had a failed department head search that we had identified a candidate, agreed on terms, and then right before the contract was signed, she decided she wasn't comfortable making a cross-country move in the middle of a pandemic. So our search fell apart. And as all of you know that have ever skipped a faculty meeting, if you don't show up, they appoint you to something. So I skipped the wrong meeting and ended up a department head. So I'm going to offer my comments from the perspective of someone that used to be a productive faculty member and is now an administrator. So I'm thinking about things a lot more at kind of an administrative level or an institutional level rather than as a teacher in the classroom. But 4 things kind of came to mind that I think are worth throwing out there. The first is kind of related to the forced adoption of technology. That folks have already talked about this a fair bit, but in our department, we had a number of late adopters of technology, including myself. And the pandemic has done wonders to push us all forward and make us more comfortable teaching in an online world, in a virtual world, and all that's very good. The challenge right now I'm having is trying to figure out how do you continue that cycle once the pandemic burns off? How do you continue to encourage people to take that next step, stay technology relevant, make sure they're using all the resources available to deliver courses in an impactful way? And I don't have any good solutions on that yet. We've already found out that having resources available, having instructional support, that's simply not enough. So as an institution, Virginia Tech's trying to figure out how do we continue to make our faculty technology relevant long after COVID-19 is behind us. Second issue that's coming up, the pandemic has really forced us to step back and think about what do we really sell as an institution, right? What is our value add? And I say that because leading up to COVID-19, Virginia Tech was a firm advocate of online education. We were pushing our faculty to teach courses online synchronously, as well as to record courses to deliver asynchronously. And a lot of that was a product of our remote environment. If anybody's familiar with Blacksburg or Virginia Tech, we're about 3 hours from a metro area. So students don't stick around for the summer. So there was a time when online courses were a very viable source of revenue that Virginia Tech might not have otherwise because of our location. Now, the story's changed a little bit now that the pandemic has hit, that the university has realized our economic model does not work as a remote learning environment. We need students on campus paying for dorms, paying for meal plans, attending events in order to make the economic model work. So now there's deep suspicion about the benefits of online learning and remote education. So our administration is really stepping back and saying, okay, we need to think about what works online, what doesn't, how do we leverage the best of virtual teaching with the best of in-person instruction and really come up with something that makes sense for our students. So once again, we haven't reached a lot of conclusions on that front, but I think just the fact that the pandemic has forced that conversation is very productive and very useful. On a related note to that, we're having really real discussions about what students really want. That our students will tell us if we do survey after survey. They'll tell us that we're very lonely. We desire interpersonal interaction. We want to engage with our teachers. We want that human touch. Then when we offer courses where there is a human component or a live component, students don't show up, right? They don't come to class, they Zoom us. So now the university stepping back and saying, okay, what is the format that students really do crave? What will they participate in? What will they engage in? And we're still trying to find answers to those questions. But once again, without COVID-19, I don't think we would really be stepping back and thinking about what is the optimal delivery mechanism or mode from a student's perspective. And I disagree respectfully a little bit from what a comment Annette made earlier, that just because students tell us they want something, that doesn't mean they won't complain once they get it. They're happy to complain and change their mind once we choose a course of action as to how we're going to deliver courses. A final thing that I think is an opportunity that's come out of the pandemic and the flip side of the coin is a challenge, that due to our rural location, we've historically had a little bit of trouble recruiting faculty because there's not everybody in the world that wants to live in rural Southwest Virginia. It's not the perfect environment for a lot of faculty members, especially those that teach an urban phenomenon like real estate. So in some ways, the pandemic has really increased our ability to recruit because there's some ability for people to live in larger communities outside of Blacksburg and still deliver their courses and only commute maybe one day a week or have some kind of flexible arrangement where they're delivering some classes live, some classes remotely. And we're trying to take that out for a spin to see if it really will increase our ability to attract and retain talent from a faculty perspective. The flip side, that's created a challenge, right? That now we have a lot of faculty that are becoming very acclimated to an online environment. They like the flexibility it affords. They don't necessarily want to be on campus nearly as much as they used to be. So how do we bring them back into the classroom once they've invested a whole lot of time in preparing online lectures, recording material, and there's not this compelling reason for them to be on campus anymore? So while I think there's a lot of opportunities that have come out of COVID-19, and we're really trying to figure out how to leverage those opportunities, they've all presented corresponding challenges that I think all administrators are struggling with right now. So I throw that out there, that if anyone has any interesting ideas, I'd certainly like to talk to them offline.
Okay, thank you. That's some very good observations. I think we've had similar observations as well in terms of, and again, we have now faculty who, for a variety of reasons, would prefer not to come on campus ever again, probably, but and are happy to deliver online. But anyway, let's move to our final panelist, Stephen Roulac, who's joined us. And Stephen undoubtedly will have some interesting perspectives to share on the opportunities coming out of this for the world of real estate education, and indeed international collaborations amongst both real estate educators and researchers. Stephen, your microphone, you need to turn your microphone on.
Okay, is that working now?
Perfect, we can hear you loud and clear from very early in the morning, I suspect, in California.
Right, I apologize for being a few minutes late joining. I was having trouble accessing Zoom, and so on a personal note, this whole situation, the whole circumstance has been rather fascinating, because I'm in certain ways in the unfortunate demographic of being a digital immigrant as opposed to digital native, and I'm probably very much in the extreme realm. So technology is a continual challenge, and I have to say I'm in awe of the presentations I've seen about some of the fascinating way things are being done, and Qulin's comment about having to master multiple technologies and all of that. So what I'm seeing happening is that these events, as we've talked about, a number of presenters have highlighted, is sort of accelerating change, and simultaneously we're going to be seeing more and more emphasis of best practices and best resources. A theme I think is really critical in strategy and marketing, and therefore in the delivery of any activity or product, and most especially in service, and really when in the education knowledge learning business, we're concerned with a service and sort of the ultimate outcome. And there's a consideration of in marketing, you can talk about product features, and those companies are really really outstanding that they will emphasize not just features but the benefits and the experience. If it's instructive to consider Steve Jobs' classic product introduction presentations, the theatrical events, when you talk about this insanely great technology and all these fabulous things it does. He didn't really spend a lot of time taking apart the components of the iPhone as example and saying it does this and that. He talked about, he was saying, what is it going to happen? And it was captured eloquently, I think, in an early Apple slogan theme about bicycles for the mind, and all of this kind of thing happening. And so one of the themes that's quite intriguing is the more and more opportunity to access talent globally. I think various presenters have mentioned, I think quite instructively, that they have the ability to bring talent to their campuses in ways that they couldn't have before. And Dustin, your comment I found quite intriguing about how what had been a competitive advantage in terms of a remote location, highlighting distant learning and virtual classes and all of that, with a shift in circumstance, now that prior built-in advantage is threatened because other people can do the same. And the comment about faculty not wanting to come to campus, and in a way that technology sanctions what a lot of faculty are inclined to do anyway, which is not show up so much or not be available. And what happens is that I think many faculty, colleagues I've talked to, is they find they're on 24-hour speed dial with their students and email. They expect to have instant access. And so not only do professors and all those engaged in the education process have to spend a lot more time figuring out what is the technology and how to work with that and how to adapt it, because I think all of us grew up sort of speaking. It's easy to do that, but it's much more challenging to do some other things with that. And then you have to spend more time spending more time basically thinking, well, how do we apply this technology? And how, so not only work, but how do we apply it in this specific fact situation? How do we restructure and position and direct our courses and all of that? And what is happening, and it's probably fair to say many people in education are in extreme overload now, because they not only have a much bigger burden to figure out what and how to do it and then interact with it. And then afterwards, they have much more expectations from students, because the classic lecture approach that many people attracted to education, you prepare your lecture, you show up, you deliver it, you walk out to the lecture hall, you're on to your next event. And it's not so quick now from the student's perspective. They want to have continual interaction and so forth. So we see one effect of this is going to be a realignment of, I think, more and more emphasis on learning outcomes rather than delivery, and also the aspect of delivery in real time. I've gotten just this morning, while it's going on, some interesting observations and inputs on the very process of various elements. And so the feedback loops are much faster now, and actually there's feedback opportunity that you wouldn't otherwise have gotten before. So those are some of the dynamic things. Now, in positives, I see perhaps if I would put a conceptual structure or big idea on this, is the increased importance going forward in all of our roles, not just professionally, but personally, citizen alike, some of the role of ideas. So we're in a circumstance that more and more attention we see is going to be devoted to the ideas that are behind all of the things going on. And some of you may know of the research that I did with my colleagues at University of Ulster in terms of how value is created and destroyed in property. And I believe what I'm going to tell you now as a conclusion is applicable way beyond the property disciplines, because I do work in some other areas beyond just property per se, and find this research finding very much. And basically having looked at that, and I think a number of you probably participated in the surveys, which I thank you for doing that, that the big factor driving property value creation, destruction, both development and investment, it wasn't just access to the land, very important, but not the most important thing. It wasn't just access to capital, necessary but not sufficient. It wasn't just getting the construction building, that's got to be right, but that alone is not going to make it work, and doesn't just have your property marketing or management operation, but the ideas behind it. And so what is coming out is, I think it's reflected by a lot of really fascinating presentations that have been in this event, is that essentially the whole thing is one very positive thing is it accelerates change receptivity, is number of presenters have mentioned more collaboration and connections. Resources previously unavailable are now increasingly available. The market for innovation has been expanded, and it stimulates innovation. As Qulin Ke is like a rethink of a whole number of ideas. And at the same time, with the positives, also create some consequences and elements beyond need for new thinking. There's a higher expectations, and a fundamental theme of innovation and market receptivity to innovation is that people will take the most positive experience they've had in any aspect of their life and then transfer that expectation to everything else that goes on. And so if someone has a great meal in a restaurant, back in the time you used to be able to go to restaurants, and I could say that because particularly in California, we're on continual lockdown here. But just example, if you have a great deal in a restaurant, that sets a bar of expectations or standards of what you want for other meals you may have. But it's not just in restaurants, then it applies to all kinds of other elements. So the expectations of the customer base, say for learning, education, all of that, is not just what they may have occurred in another circumstance, like if somebody has a great course and great experience in a psychology course, and then they go over to their chemistry course or to their sociology course or anything else, they say, well, why can't that be as good as what I had over there? And so, and that applies all across disciplines. So the circumstances with technology just in education, but we have instant feedback with Yelp ratings and all of that. And just as I mentioned in this session itself, just the messages are coming out are quite intriguing on the chat side. So we're seeing, say, a number of quite positive, interesting things out of that. And so overall, I'd say you're going to see, I'll give you a couple comments. I'm going to take you through one property type, which I find really fascinating. What's going on is some of the implication how this plays out. More information exchange, more, but at the same time, there's more opportunity. There are also more constraints in certain ways, and those can be institutional. As I mentioned, my comments in the session yesterday, we see much more government power. And one of the considerations is government has the ability to enforce certain things. And at least from things I observe and experience directly, and I'll say I have first-person empirical knowledge, database of one, I'm going through substantial renovations on my house right now. And it is absolutely extraordinary, the process of dealing with the regulatory environment and permitting and all of that. And it's intriguing that if you, and also I've gone through a number of financings recently, working with that, how institutionalized and global and technology advanced various things can be, and how still certain individuals exert incredible power and influence. Like the role of the appraiser in finance in a financing is not necessarily readily appreciated, or the building official as to whether you get your permits and all of that. And so you have there's a whole chain of dependency of activities that single individuals still are exerting a lot of influence on. And so that's something I think will probably be reassessed. I'd say there's a fundamental challenge we have, and I think a very positive one, as to how to define the discipline. Is it more in the built environment realm? And I will readily acknowledge I've long been in that camp. Jim Grasskamp, close personal friend, and he and I shared those sentiments along. And my academic appointment has been at University of Ulster for a number of years on a visiting basis, and that's very clearly a built environment element. So so that whole European orientation is going to be increasingly important. And I think there's going to be a more, say, increased pressure to rethink what property really is and how property use decisions are made. Clearly, virtual is being more significant. And as Annette was describing in her comments, it's the intersection between the virtual and real is going to be ever more critical. I had a JRER paper on that basic issue of the supply chain going through physical and virtual, and as back like 1990s kind of time, but that's really coming forward. And as I think Éamonn made in comments earlier, a lot of things we had just accelerated change, and what would happen in a normal pace, say a prior pace of evolution that might have been a 10 or 20 year thing, now is you basically you can change years to months in terms of how things happen, and you can change months to days in how things happen today. So it's fascinating, some of these dynamics and what they all mean. I would say at the same time that virtual is more important, my thesis is that real is going to be more important going forward. One of my thoughts, themes I've talked about in my work on place, is that as place choice becomes more significant, as people have more opportunities, what they actually choose will be more important. And given that you can do so many things virtually, the choice to do it in real time is a bit bigger choice. And in the same time, through the technology, sociology, everything going on, you have higher risk in terms of pandemic and physical risks and all of that. So the information about places and properties and how people interact, that's going to be of ever greater importance. And there's a case, example, just think of ice cream. If you have only chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry to choose from, that's not such a big choice. But when you can choose from 100 of it, it's a much bigger choice. And so the choice you make, the more options you have, the more important the choice is. You have now more options to do things. And so those choices we think will be particularly important. And out of that, we see that property is going to be ever more important. And if you look just at housing, I'll talk about it very shortly, market indicators indicate that property is very more important if you just look by metrics of transactions and pricing and all of that. But the decisions people make, we think, will be influenced by more factors, more complexity, more independence, more variability, wider elements. We're moving away from a statistical concept of bell-shaped curve to fat-tailed curves more and more, both on the left and right side. So that makes the role of what is a discipline we do in terms of knowledge transmission, education, facilitation of people's functioning of ever greater importance. One item I'll just close on with a story talked about complexity of perspective. And I think what's happening in housing, and I'll talk it from the US perspective, because that's where I have more recent information on, is it's a very fascinating prism of rapid change and resistance to change, or being able to enjoy installed relationship and expertise, if you will. And what's intriguing is that real estate agents, it's not as well publicized, but the biggest winners, I think, have been a lot of the house agents in the US, because they're getting faster transactions, do much less work, much higher prices, and the commissions are not coming down that much. There's been some commission erosion, but it's intriguing that the house markets, the house agents have been able to largely resist having much fee competition, notwithstanding a number of alternative models, but that still is coming up. And one of the intriguing, let's say, counterintuitive tech innovations out of all of this is the Compass business model, where essentially they said, we're going to do a roll-up of real estate agents. There was promised a whole lot of technology. As I went through the numbers of that model, I had a really hard time seeing how it logically could work, because they're basically buying, high-priced brokerage firms where the agents are doing very well, and they were paying, essentially signing bonuses to top talent, not too different from what you might pay a sports star to get them to be on your team, or a entertainer. And so we're going to still give you a very high commission payout rate. And we're going to then give you all this extra technology that's going to make it really great. And there's supposedly be a little margin. So the question is, could the company get big enough so that it would have a revenue base to fund the technology and deliver value proposition and still show some profits? Well, evidently it's worked sufficiently, because Compass is on target to have an IPO next year. And it's now the largest brokerage firm in the US, and it's going to be very intriguing. And we look at the challenge in, from a tech perspective in California, Airbnb was thought to be, some people in the spring were saying that company is toast. I mean, geez, people aren't going to travel, and how can you sustain it, and so on. And they had a record-setting IPO recently. So a lot of interesting things on the whole housing realm. And so what we're seeing is that in the housing front, technology it enables transactions, but at the same time, it enhances the surplus by being able to make things go faster and less expensively. But that surplus, in sort of classic economic terms, has been the real estate agents, which are capturing more of the revenue share out of it. So it's a very fascinating thing. And at the same time, the home building business, which has been in the doldrums for years and years, is enjoying record activity now. Builders are seeing lots and lots of things going on very positively. And all this is sort of reflecting that people are spending more time in their houses. So that's a more important thing to them. Activities that used to be done outside the house in terms of their schooling and exercise, entertainment, their work, that is more and more house centered. And so there it's more important. There's, example, there's some beneficiaries are on the margins. One retail activity that's really going, where the companies are engaged in framing, is putting picture frames and posters together. All that's, those people are really thriving. So people, more time in house, more investment in the house, they have more autonomy in the house. At the same time, the government exerts more control over the house, and the house is going to be a big focus of government revenue collection. And then you have issues of migration and the tax policy in the US that basically reflects one could argue, a red state antipathy to where the economic drivers in the US are, which is basically New York State and California. And by eliminating state tax deductibility, you dramatically increase the cost of living and diminish the competitive edge of those places and motivate people to go to other places. And so you're seeing migration, basically, Florida in the US increasingly is thought of as another borough of the 5 boroughs in New York City, and lots of California companies are moving. So it's a very dynamic thing. So the positives is what we're doing is, more and more attention, higher interest, bigger stakes in decisions, more variability of outcome. And I just would close, the various mentions on virtual teaching and so forth. To the extent any of you are looking at programming, I'm open to talk about virtually teaching any course anywhere in the world if my background is helpful to you. And I suspect most everybody in the seminar would have a similar concept that, hey, Dustin said, well, I can't, I'm in Blacksburg, my travel is sort of hard, but, and he does, great work in whole property management film, other things. So, well, you could easily teach a course in Krakow or Shanghai or anywhere else on a virtual basis. So those are, I think, some exciting developments. And I do want to thank the organizers and presenters. Just been an extraordinary sessions, and I really appreciate being part of it and learned a whole lot from the sessions I've gotten into, and looking forward to seeing some notes otherwise. So Plum and Gunther, thank you so much for organizing this.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Again, a very wide perspective. We almost got a real estate course thrown in, as well as perspective of education there. As I said, we were slightly off topic, but again, some interesting insights and parallels. I think one thing I will take from what you were saying, certainly in the real estate sector in the UK, every private sector meeting I've been at recently, everybody's talking about trend acceleration and the implications of that. In many ways, I think from this seminar, we're looking at trend acceleration as well, but obviously applied to the world of real estate education. And indeed, in the beginnings of new trends, again, in terms of some of the models we've been talking about this morning. Okay, our panelists have all given us a lot to think about. I now would like to open this to the floor. We have certainly got some time. We've got over half an hour for discussion. And I know there's a number of people who want to input. So Gunther, do you want to input first of all?
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to start with some very quick comments to Quillin's statement. I think, well, about the importance of the university. I think the critical thing is what's called tacit knowledge in economics, and that's the thing that cannot be codified so easily. So, but this is a process that goes back until Gutenberg. So when we started to write textbooks, we codified our knowledge, but still the university survive. So I'm more optimistic there. I think the universities will also survive codifying our knowledge in the new media because there is still tacit knowledge that we can communicate to the students. The question is how we do this. Second point I want to make, and then I'll come back to the opportunities. We heard a lot about Zoom, of course, about MS Teams and other software. There is an open source software which can do pretty much the same thing, which is called Jitsi. So if you're looking for an easy opportunity with kind of just a very simple software, that's a good one. You can run your own server, so you don't have a problem with location of the server in the US and whatever. The point has been made a couple of times, but in my view, not clearly enough. The real development that we see is a speeded up process towards digitalization. And this process has an implication which Dustin mentioned implicitly, and that is it reduces or it changes the effective distance. So with the digital, the virtual elements we have available now, the distances have changed dramatically. The distance to prospective students, the distance to our colleagues, the distance to possible case studies, the distance to professionals who may become engaged in our course, and so on and so on and so on. So many of those distances have changed, which create opportunities for us. And they've been mentioned. We should put together something like some case study material. We should put together something like virtual excursions and tours and things like that. We should try to engage our colleagues into our teaching. Yes, I fully agree, but there are two dangers there that I see. Number one is in one of our earlier locations at the Institute, we had a big poster there on the wall with, I think, 2 or 3 hippos with their mouth wide open. And it said, when everything was said and done, there was a lot more said than done. So I think this is one of the risks. We also need to do that, not just talk about this. And after having attended a number of ERES board meetings, I know that there is a real danger in this respect. The second point is, and that's the more serious one, there is the reduced distances also open up opportunities for competitors. And there is a lot of potential competition out there. There are some organizations in the real estate industry who may think to take over the education of their next employees. There are the Elsevier's and the Springers, and they are all out there who may take over organizing some of the teaching material for us. If we don't do that, they will do it, and they will do it in a different way. If we do it, we can use the material or the standards that have been developed, the open access standards, the open source standards, using Creative Commons licenses to have a clear open structure which can be used by anyone under certain conditions. If we allow them to do this, then they will put this material behind the paywall, and our universities, ourselves, our funding organizations, they will again be ripped off. So I think we have a window of opportunity to do that. For that type of cooperation, you need a network. And what do we have here? We have a network. We have an organization which basically is a network of academics, of people with experience in this area. So we have everything there. We just need to do it. And it's to the critical thing, to come to the technology point, and then I'll end. The critical thing is not the technology. I think you need to decide what technology you want to use for that. But the critical thing is the organizational side. Someone has to organize that. We don't really just need the storage capacity. We need someone who says, okay, it should be done in this and this and this way, and it needs to be checked, and then we can provide it, and then we can also advertise it, and then we can distribute it. So there are a couple of important points there, I think.
I very much agree with you in terms of actually doing these things as against talking about them. And I'm very glad to say Gunter is our incoming president of the European Real Estate Society. So I'm hoping
Forgot to mention that.
some of things will be a reality, hopefully, as a result of his presidency. But I think that's really positive.
I'm listening carefully.
Yeah, Francois wanted to add something.
Yeah, let me, first of all, let me take this opportunity, and I know maybe there'll be time at the end, but on behalf of the IRES community and sister societies, to thank you very much to Éamonn, you and to Qulin for what has happened in the last 2 days. I think it has done a lot to the members of our sister society, so thank you very much. But the point that I really wanted to also make here is, and I think it's a point that Stephen made, the idea of a year becoming a month becoming a day, that it's not just a question that we're dealing with of distance, but I think there's going to be a question of time as well. Time and distance. I mean, we're starting to see the 24-hour cities. We're starting people saying, I'll go out when I feel like going out. If I want to work till 9, I want to work late at night. So I think from an educational perspective, we also have the challenge of structure. At what time people will study, at what time do they want to study. So either we stay with the structures that we have, but I think what this also does is it puts the dimension of time into the equation and not just the parameter of distance. I suppose that's all I wanted to add. And I think that's going to be a challenge. Either you go onto the online day and you keep some level of structure of saying on the Tuesday we're going to do this and on the Wednesday, or it becomes a free fall. And I think what we've certainly experienced is that the moment the structure starts falling apart, problems starts coming into the equation. And yes, we've come from a very sequential idea of when you study what, and we will set the time. And so the question is whether we lose both distance and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois, for the perspective. I'm now going to hand over to Karen Gibler because she's got a comment to make.
Yeah, thank you. Now I've got a comment on Francois. I'm curious from those that are teaching how flexible your students have been on time, because what I've found with the collaboration with colleagues around the world is they're becoming very flexible about what time we meet. I see, you know, Dustin's on here at 3:30 in the morning. We've been having board meetings where people start at 12. Catherine got off of one at 2 a.m. And these are things we would not have asked people to do a year or two ago. People would have said, oh, no, that's not convenient. And it's interesting how the perspective has changed amongst our colleagues about time. And being willing to join at very odd times online because they can do it from their home. The technology enables that. I'm not sure that's true about your students, or your students may prefer meeting at 2 a.m. or something like that. But Gunter makes a good point. We all want to improve education. We want to improve research. We want to collaborate. But we often comes back to relying upon the very same small group of people to organize these events, to organize the databases. We rely on the European online digital library to support the other societies, that sort of thing. I'm wondering also, what do you think as a group we can do to encourage more of our colleagues to indeed collaborate in terms of bringing their case studies to share, in terms of sharing their best practices in the classroom? We have this right now once a year event. Would they collaborate quarterly? Are they too busy just trying to survive through this? And you think that at the end of the pandemic, they'll go back to their old ways in terms of not collaborating. I'm curious about ideas and how to get better participation.
Thank you, Karen. I think there's some good ideas there. Again, time is a major constraint for most people, particularly in the current circumstances. I know this seminar originally we were hoping to have earlier, but both Paloma, myself, and others involved, the immediate demands of term and servicing students online sort of took over most of our spare time. So, but I'm glad it's still that we've had time for this to happen. Any other perspectives? Karen Saraki. Karen's always asking questions. Do you want to add something in terms of opportunities going forward?
Well, I liked what Gunther had to say about changing things. And what he said to me was that we've got 2 years of a window. So as with regard to IRES, you got to stop talking and start doing, because the clock is ticking. I mean,
yeah.
How are you going to motivate everybody to do something? Because I know you guys like to talk.
We like to talk, and I think we need to get something tangible out of these 2 days. And we've talked about this before. I think the fact that the 2 days are recorded, that's at least something tangible compared to where we normally are. But it's trying to sort of get an agenda. I know Francois in the pre-discussion was talking about even just simply producing a list of available technologies and packages people are using, and providing some advice on that as a way forward. I know Francois wants to come in now.
Well, I suppose, I don't know whether it's Karen or me, but I've found the 2 days very useful. And as the incoming president, I think I'm certainly walking away and I'm listening very carefully to what is being said and the opportunities that arise. But I think that what we see in front of us is an absolute new opportunity for IRES, which we, in the more closed world, was a lot more complicated to achieve. We can get people around the table. We can get things done. I believe in a very different way. And I think there are certain projects that are coming up. Whether we invite lecturers to IRES or have a program, and I think that especially for IRES to be able to operate internationally. And yes, Karen, I've heard. We'll talk, but we'll get things done.
Yeah, I mean, what amazes me is that there's so much goodwill around the table that people want to contribute and to do something. So that's a great step to build on.
We'll unleash the goodwill.
Well, I think you asked how.
I would like to add to that and the goodwill. And for a couple of years, I have been part of several organizations, sometimes in the board or leading it myself, sometimes being a member. And I found out there's a lot of goodwill, and people are really willing to give a lot of their spare time for free. But if you want to have things that happen in a given overseeable time, and you can rely on that, you have to have people who are paid for their work. It has to be a job. And that's, I'm totally convinced of that. And it will be better because all the foundations that I know that really are making progress and giving back are those who are good, not only in ideas and making things happen, but also in fundraising for paying professional people to implementing their good ideas and to really following up on that. And I can only recommend that if we want to do something like a resource exchange, a knowledge management system for real estate all over the world, and I think there would be a really great chance to do that, we need to think about how we could fund a person at IRES who is the knowledge manager for that. That would be my really strong recommendation on that.
Annette, I think I'll let me respond. I mean, I think there are two roles here. And I agree with you. The association I've been involved, you actually need the goodwill of the people around for the ideas and getting that around the table. And then you actually need to have the people who work on this on a regular basis, And I think to mix those two functions gets you into a certain risk that you don't deliver, on certain things. So absolutely. Karen, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak on your behalf as well as the director of IRES.
Gunther.
Well, I think now with the pandemic hopefully getting to an end in the next couple of months, I think now we have the opportunity to raise some external funds for something like that, with the argument, okay, we learned our lesson there. There are opportunities. We need to implement them, and we need support for that. That's the first point. The second point is, how do we do this? One of the strongest mechanisms that I found in a couple of similar projects that I did in the past was example. I think all you need is a handful of people, institutions who start to put something in there to contribute to that, and then the others will say, "Oh, why aren't we in there?"
Yeah,
that's how we got the institutes at our university to come up with the institute homepages. We started this, and then they said, "Oh, why aren't we there?" and started to work on their own homepages, institute homepages. This was way back before any integration and consolidation at the university level. But example, and then competition among the institutions, that gets people going, and then you get that running.
Yeah. With a strong champion sort of running it. Yeah.
Right. But we at ERES, we are in a situation that when Paloma asked me in the morning, do we have a YouTube channel? I had to say, I don't think so. So we are not the leaders here.
Éamonn, question.
Yes. Yes, Stephen.
This is being recorded. Is there a plan to have it have the sessions transcribed? And if not, I'm glad to take that on, or my team will, because that's something I would do. But get my team to do that if that would be helpful. If we don't have that in place.
I don't know if you load up, for example, these days, if you load something up on Microsoft Streams, it automatically transcribes it for you without doing anything. So, because all our lecture screencasts in the university, we upload them on Streams, and then 20 minutes later, they're all transcribed automatically by Microsoft for us. So saves us a lot of problems. But yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about that at the end in terms of how we disseminate the sessions basically to everybody, both ERES and IRES networks. So we'll come to that. Any other perspectives on the opportunities going forward? I think we've covered a lot of territory. Herman, do you want to add something? Or was I misinterpreting your hand signal a minute ago?
No, not really. The only thing is that opportunities, I would also say threats. So that's a little bit what I wanted to say in the chat is that, of course, we are all, and I myself, we are very surprised that, in fact, we can switch in almost 48 hours. We can switch from one model into another model. That's exactly what our university did. It's unbelievable. This is extremely successful for all of us. It's a challenge, it's an opportunity, but it's everything, and it's in first place very, very well done exercise from all of us and from the students. Is it only positive? No, I don't think so. There are also threats, and that's what I wanted to say. And perhaps from time to time we should be aware of those. And I mentioned in the chat that indeed, because we are connecting throughout the world without knowing it, because Stefan, I don't see that you are in a totally different continent. It could be that you're next door, here in the same street in Ghent, in Belgium. So we don't see that anymore. And yeah, this makes perhaps life sometimes extremely easy and nice. But I think it's also a threat. I think forgetting about our natural habit of having a few hours of sleep, having weekends, having like holidays and things like that. I think there is also a value in that thing. Huh? So that's the only thing I wanted to stress when we design courses, when we design our own workload, etc., etc. It is also this just natural rhythm of us being human beings to be respected and taken into account next to all the rest. So, and there are probably also other challenges, like I said, for instance, competition increases, and that's clear. Huh? We are no longer local. That's no longer possible. And so on and so on. That was in fact the point I wanted to make. There is not only positive things, there are also a lot of threats, and we don't see them yet sufficiently, I think.
Yes, that's our threats. We could be recorded by our universities and played for the next 20 years, and we can then be made redundant in the process, basically. But the one good thing about real estate markets, they change all the time, so the material has to be updated. So that's a positive going forward. It's not a microeconomics lecture, which could be probably put to screencasted 10 years ago and is still relevant, basically. So there are some positives. Anyway, Karen, do you want to add anything further from an IRES perspective?
I think these are great ideas, and yes, I'm one known for throwing out these sorts of ideas at IRES board meetings about that we should look at global networks, global working groups. You know, we've had proposals put to us, Annette, in the past and others, of ways to come up with these global repositories. And there's been hesitancy because of not wanting to step on the toes of the regional societies, because, you know, we are the umbrella group for all the societies. But I think this year has shown us that instead of, again, it being competition, it could be helpful for all the members of the different societies if we could do this on a more global level to reduce some of the workload on the different societies replicating the same sort of materials and sharing. And, you know, there are technology requirements. Those are things we have to work with. IRES, unfortunately, has relied very heavily on Paloma and her institutes for supporting us financially through providing the technology support. I mean, someone is paying to have those videos uploaded to YouTube, whether it's paying us out of our time or paying her staff to do this work. But I think it's a good idea from Gunther that this is something we get sponsorship for too, going forward, that I think there'd be a better understanding. In the past, we've asked for sponsors to pay for cocktail parties and other events at these conferences. I could see us asking for a sponsorship to help with some of the technology or something to share. Very open to ideas, and we're trying to bring in more volunteers all the time to work with us. So that's my point of view.
And again, just to sort of reiterate, this is the 16th ERES Education Seminar, so it evolves. These events evolve, and I think this year has been a very important evolution for the seminar. I think the fact that we're able to go global, and maybe this is where we should evolve further in future years. And I don't think, I can't speak for the ERES board as such, but I suspect the members who are here on this call are quite happy and open to the idea of having this event in the future continue to be a co-branded event with IRES, because I think there's obviously a demand globally for a seminar of this nature. I know the sister societies do education elements, and the American Real Estate Society in particular has an education tract, but I think this seminar at the sort of end of the year seminar on education, I think is something we certainly could continue to think about as being more of a global event than just purely a European event going forward, because the experiences we've shared over the last 2 days have been very important for everybody. Annette has a comment. I know that she's been.
Yeah, more than one comment. One suggestion to the funding of something like that. What we do at the TWR network is, and I have like two weeks ago, I have transferred the money. A part of our conference fee, which I needed to budget in, is going to the TWR network, which is not even anything legal institution. It's really a network that is organized by Ryan Apple-Moyenbroek. And we said like, I don't remember, like 5% of our funding of the conference fees goes into the network for something that we need. It's not much at the moment because we are very small, but this is a possibility to somehow fund the IRES network for things that need to be done and not to be reliable on situational things. Of course, we could also do some more other things of funding from the industry, but I think it's necessary that the IRES has a budget to do the work that is urgently necessary to give the global reach. And I disagree that the regional societies would be disabled. It's like the teaching. They have their regional responsibilities. They have the regional network, the regional links, the regional problems, the focus, the priorities. And it's just the same as we as instructors or teachers will not become unnecessary because we have global videos on how investment processes are done globally. Why should I record that again, although there are much better tapes? I'm facilitating the teaching and the learning with my students, and they are regional and they have regional questions, they have local questions. And I think we will never become unnecessary as the professors to build a regional, a local learning environment that adapts to the local needs. And so I'm not afraid that we will not have work. The other thing is we have too much work, especially in real estate, to professionalize, to be inefficient. I mean, there is this huge unprofessionalism all over the world, and we try to redo that, and we have to be as efficient to be effective as possible. So we have to make use of our networks and of the global knowledge, and this is something. And I think this conference was great, and I want to thank Éamonn and Paloma and Karen and Gunther and everybody who has made this possible, because it shows how effective we can be if we work together globally and how rewarding this is. At least for me, thank you very much. It was a great experience. I learned so much, and I'm really happy about all the contexts I renewed and got new, and it was fabulous. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Annette. And I think, again, I think we all feel a bit renewed and energized after a very busy term, hearing colleagues sharing. I think that's been a real positive. And again, I see a lot of positive comments from the chat here about the format being online, that it makes it accessible to a much wider range of people. And I think that's something we need to be very clear about. Undoubtedly, we'll go back to undoubtedly we'll go back to real world education seminars with people face to face, but I think we have to find a mechanism for retaining the online, because I think it allows accessibility to a much wider group of people going forward. Gunther has a final comment? No final comment. Anybody else with a final comment? Because we're pretty much on time here. We're 16:28 Central European time. Anybody want to make a final comment? Karen.
Thank you for inviting us in as IRES to be an official part of this. And
we thought it was a good idea because of the simple reason we were online for the first time, so everybody could participate.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I said it earlier, but I think for all the sister societies, AFRIS, Latin America, for many who are far away, this has been an absolute opportunity. It just shows how internationally we can function through these good seminars. So Karen, I completely agree with you.
Stephen, you want to make a point?
Yes. One point following up on some of the comments about the compression of time and flexibility and all of that is I would ask that we might reflect, should this event specifically and other events generally operate on a one-year calendar time horizon, or do we have to wait nearly 12 months before we can convene again to pursue some of these topics? I just would offer that as something to to consider. And then I would suggest, as various people commented, that would be helpful to have a session that is explicitly oriented to content and what we want students to learn or get from or benefit or be able to do as a result of things. So basically, as I was saying, going beyond just delivery to really look at what is the outcome we want to achieve. And I'd love to see a session just on that particular element, or more dedicated time to talk about those things.
Previous editions, many previous editions of this seminar, we've had these discussions on content and what constitutes core. So it's something we can return to. But this year, obviously, we're very focused on a particular topic, which has taken most of our time. Any other comments from anybody? I know Jeffrey's made a comment. Do you want to add to it in person?
I just wanted to reiterate basically what Annette was talking about regarding the international exposure. In the professional development course that I teach, I was very surprised. Student feedback at the end of the semester was basically saying this world is international. Companies are multinational. There is much more palatable reasons for the students to explore international opportunities, and they want to learn about that. It's not just learning about what's in your local area anymore. And so to Annette's point of having mechanisms where we are able as faculty to expose students to those international opportunities, it is, I think, a desired topic for students, and it can enhance learning. I know some of the work Dustin's been doing this semester, the collaboration. I'd love to see more of that in this community to the benefit of students.
Yeah, fully agree. Again, well, in Europe, it's probably been more traditional to have an international real estate module. And indeed, it's one of our largest elective modules at Reading, basically, because a lot of our students, both international and indeed domestic, end up essentially in international roles. So it's increasingly important to share these experiences.
Éamonn, if I could just add,
Yeah, sure.
and I think just on that particular point, I think we have a real opportunity, again, for students across the world to come and listen, to attend, where your undergraduates would never travel, would never have a budget, would never have an opportunity to interact with the European American and the other societies. I think this is a real opportunity to suddenly bringing, perhaps this even as part of the courses that we run, to have sessions where students can interact directly without having to travel to the other side of the world.
And there might be, sorry, yeah, go ahead, Sandy, yes, please.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to speak to Jeffrey's comment. When I was teaching in California, and of course I've lived in different countries and I'm familiar with just different countries, the real estate markets, including Australia and New Zealand, and I would use some case studies from those countries. Well, the Californian students weren't real happy about that. I actually got some criticism that it wasn't local examples, it was not local. So I'm curious about some of the other American academics, if they've had similar experience when they've perhaps used international examples, but the students are kind of not happy about that. They want to know local only. And of course I use local guest speakers, and I involve them in IRES, the International Real Estate, sorry, the IREM, the Institute of Real Estate Management, and other organizations. We have agreements with those organizations to involve the students in their seminars. But yeah, so I have a slightly different experience to that.
Thanks, Sandy, for sharing that. Any further comments from anybody on anything to do with this? I think one of the things, again, just touching what Stephen said, but something Annette had said earlier, the idea of maybe a quarterly community of practice meeting or something to keep the agenda going. It could be, again, it's trying to find the right time zone. That's always the problem. But Karen has become almost an expert at identifying the right time zone for IRES meetings. We had a board meeting there, which was very well attended at 10 o'clock UK time at night, which was fine. But maybe that might be the way forward with this, instead of waiting 12 months, is to come up with a topic for a community of practice, one which is obviously of interest to the IRES community, and to go forward that. And then that might allow the sister societies in IRES to host those quarterly community of practice, that, you know, that one sister society puts their hands up to take the first one and so on. And as I said, the Europeans, we have gone for this education seminar format because I think it works well in the European context. And again, Europe's been through this process of trying to upgrade the quality of real estate education and real estate professionals. It's been a 20, 30-year process, which is still continuing. And the education side has been an important component of that. But I think it might be interesting to do something like that, to have this, to sort of get something tangible from this. And again, to try to begin to implement some of this instead of, as Gunther says, always talking about it, but not actually following up in terms of tangible impacts. Okay. Any other comments? Community of real estate education practice. Good. That's really good. It's co-reap. Yes, that's good. Thank you, Annette. And Sandy's comment again. Yes, Paul, thank you for that. I think that's good. Upload presentations. I'm going to hand over to Gunther because those last few minutes, I know we wanted to talk about how we can share what we've done. So I am not the expert on technology. Gunther is the expert. So I'm going to hand over to Gunther to tell us a bit about uploading the presentations. And also,
I think that I asked all presenters. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I asked all presenters to send the presentation to Gunther and myself, or just Gunther, and we will put Bob in charge to put on the library, ERES library. All the presentations will, in fact, all the presentations from the previous education seminars are there, will be available to the library. And we also will manage to upload also the videos and on the library as well, and with a direct link to the website, our website, the European Real Estate Society one.
Well, the we basically means I.
No, I can help.
Well, that would be difficult to send 1.2 gigabytes over to you just for you to help. So it's easy. No, they are pretty big. They are pretty big. These files, I downloaded them yesterday. They are pretty big. So I'll do some editing, and then for the first round, probably we'll make them available in the tool where you registered, because there we can control the access, so it's not public. Probably via a YouTube link, a private YouTube link. And then we need to talk about how to use parts of that for some advertisement or to put out on some social media. But the raw cut of the videos will be available for you in this tool, in the ERES network.
Again, thanks, Gunther. Again, it's making it available also to our IRES colleagues. But again, if you've registered for the seminar,
yeah, everyone who's registered for the seminar.
That should
so we can put a link from the International Real Estate Society website for direct link to the videos as well, and presentations.
Good. Jim, thank you for sharing again your resources from yesterday, because your presentation was very useful.
Yes,
I think a lot of people were very interested in the resources you were talking about. So again, thanks for sharing that. I think we're coming to a close. We said we'd close at 16:45. We're 16:38 at the moment. So anybody want to make any final comments other than probably wishing everybody a very good holiday season? And we all sincerely hope that 2021 is an improvement on 2020. I hope anyway.
And you said we should bring
from Nairobi, Kenya. I just
want very good.
You've been wonderful, and it's been a joy to just see all of you and such a good high-class presentations. This is a learning process for us here in IRES, and we are going to kind of domesticate what we are seeing ERES and IRES doing. It is really wonderful, and From Nairobi, a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you, please.
Thank you. Anybody
Thank
else
you.
want to wish anybody any goodwill? We've got some time. We're not going to, it's not a Zoom call, it's going to close down.
No, but the Prime Minister's going to be speaking in a minute and probably tell us we can't do anything over the Christmas period, I think.
My flight to Belfast on Tuesday morning might be gone. Who knows? They say.
Oh,
Good to see everyone.
Anna.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks to Santi. I don't have a Santi hat. I wish I had one. I'm wrong house for the Santi hat.
Éamonn, I just wanted to ask
I
you.
can make some antler ears.
At the peak, how many people were in the seminar at the peak?
I think yesterday morning was the peak, which was about pretty close to 60. And we have had yesterday afternoon, we were about nearly close to 50 yesterday afternoon. This morning, we were consistently on 35 this morning. And this afternoon, we've been about 30. I think we peaked at about 31, which is really good. I think we've had over about 150 people registered. Some people obviously register for free seminars who never joined, but I think the vast majority joined. Because of the time zone, we had a very different audience in the morning from the afternoon. Because the morning we've had our colleagues from Australia and from Asia. And in the afternoon, we've had our colleagues from the US, except Dustin, who's been with us all day. I have to keep saying that. You know, and the Europeans have been pretty much there all day, and the Africans have been there pretty much all day as well, because again, the time zone works really well for ERES and for IRES.
No way, Karen, as you said, Karen made sure that the last IRES meeting that we were at midnight and Catherine was at 2 in the morning or something. So I think we all have our moment of a difficult time or late night. So that's going to be
Will
also.
you give us certificates of attendance? The University of Nairobi would like at least for us to show evidence that we participated in this international seminar.
Oh,
You sure we can make something like that?
We can make something.
yeah, we can make.
Yeah.
We can do it. We can do it. We have the list of participants every time. My peak is 54. Éamonn, I have been taking pictures of all of you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
My peak is 54. Yeah, and I can say 54 in which session. So we can issue our certificate. Just send to me, this time to me, not to Gunther, an email, and I will issue one.
Thank you.
What is the attendance during the physical seminars?
The physical seminar, face to face.
We've had it depends on location. We've had 70 people, we've had 30 people, we've had everything in between, basically. So, and again, it's cost, I think, more than anything else. People have got a cost to come. And certainly, I don't think we could have had something like this so close to Christmas in the physical format because it wouldn't work for people. But this year it does. So another positive of COVID, basically. Normally, we have this seminar at the end of November because it tends to be a slightly better time for educators in Europe. But as I said, this time we got later because of the amount of other things going on. But it seems to have worked by going later. But I don't think it'd work in a physical format later because it's just too close to Christmas.
Some comments?
Anybody else? Lots of thank yous. Thank you, Sandy, for the comments. That's good to see you.
And then I suppose, yeah, just from me, happy Christmas, New Year. But I think most important, there's only one objective in 2020, that is to stay healthy. And I think, and I wish you all a safe going forward. It's all difficult times for many people. So,
yeah.
Wonderful final words.
Thank you, Francois, as the incoming IRES president. So,
thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, everyone. Keep safe.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Bye.